Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today for our webinar on powerful Salesforce data migration with Snapshot. We're pretty excited. It's a brand new feature that we've added to the tool. It's a free upgrade for all of our customers. So it's really expanded our capabilities, and you're going to get a great look at it today. Okay, so who are we? I'm Tom Appleton, and we also have Sridhar with us today, who runs our technical services team. And Sridhar is going to be taking us through the demo today and answering all of the tough questions. So just a quick overview of what you're going to look at today is, of course, Snapshot. And Snapshot really has kind of three major areas to it. It has change and release management. So as you can imagine, taking backups of your orgs, comparing differences between them, migrating metadata changes between them in sort of a powerful and flexible way. And then that can all be scheduled or automated so that your backups and the migrations are automated with continuous integration. And another major aspect of it that we're going to look at today, and the brand new feature, is our data migration piece. So we've now, from the same interface, fully integrated the ability for you to move large data sets to migrate those data sets between your orgs. And then the last aspect of Snapshot that was, is a really big piece of it as well, is what we call org management. So we have over 24 reports that cover things like org optimization and cleanup, org investigation, profile security comparison, lots of the documentation like a data dictionary. So a lot of the day-to-day things that you have to do as an administrator or a developer while you're getting ready for a release. We have a lot of tools to help you with that. So those three pieces together, the release management piece, the data migration piece, and the org management piece, all come together in sort of one power tool set that is Snapshot. So with that, we're going to take a look at it. We're going to hand it off to Sridhar here so that we can take a look at the tool. We're going to look at Snapshot as a whole just to give a quick overview for those of you that are new to the tool. And then we're going to dive in and spend some time on the brand new data migration piece. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Sridhar. Sridhar, off to you, sir.
Thank you, Tom. Let me share my screen here today. All right, I just shared my screen, so hopefully you guys can see this. So for those of you who have been with us since the Dream Factory days, just to kind of put this in perspective, we always had Snapshot, which was a metadata-focused tool, gives you the capability to back up your org metadata, help you see differences between versions of the same org or diff between orgs and migrate things over. And we had a sister tool associated with Snapshot called Monarch, which took care of the data migration portions. So what we have done here, once we have become Metazoa here, is we have combined all that into the Snapshot umbrella. So Snapshot as a tool can take care of your metadata as well as data needs, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So with that said, before I go into the product itself, I want to throw a quick blurb about our architecture. Our architecture is pretty unique in the change and release management world in Salesforce. We are primarily a client architecture model. So what that means is you're going to be installing us behind your firewall on your infrastructure, and the product that is running on your machines is talking directly to your Salesforce org. There is no Metazoa servers, there is no Amazon Web Services or Metazoa-owned Salesforce org or any of that stuff in the mix, which essentially means is your business secrets, your org configuration, or data even resides completely in your control. We have no visibility whatsoever into any of that, and that makes a world of a difference for our healthcare, finance, pharma, education, insurance customers, right? So it's all in your control. So with that said, let's jump right into the product itself. What you see here is the product that is running on my Mac machine. We also have great support for Windows. Our development happens on the Windows setups for the most part. Primarily, we come in to help you design your deployment pipeline. And that's really what you're seeing here. You as a administrator or developer can design your visual pipelines, deployment pipelines kind of visually, where you can connect pretty much anything to anything and then move stuff around. So what are you seeing here today is two important concepts to learn. One, these green icons are your content repositories. Could be Git, Bitbucket, TFS, VCS, Subversion, whatever you might have. We have the ability to pull metadata from that as well as commit metadata back into them. Then you have these blue icons. Those are connections to your Salesforce orgs. Could be sandboxes, could be developer editions, could be multiple production orgs. Doesn't really matter. We use the metadata API to access any and all of your orgs and have the ability to pull and push metadata into them. And by the way, we do have great support for DX as well. So in case you guys have already started on that, congratulations. It's a great tool. It's going to be great for you as you develop your unlock packages and such. We are already there to help you with that as well. We'll be able to pull metadata from your Scratch org as well as push metadata into your Scratch org from sandboxes, production orgs, whatever you prefer. Right? Very much visual, and then you have these deploy arrows that can let you connect whatever piece that you want and deploy metadata into a sandbox or commit them back into your code repository and such. So I'll give you a very quick overview of the Snapshot tool before we move over to the data mover portion of Snapshot. So I'm going to start off by connecting to a Salesforce org. What I mean by connecting to a Salesforce org is pretty simple. You are essentially giving it credentials. So this is all going to be within your control. Everything is going to be encrypted even while it is in memory. So there is no security concerns, whatever. And with that connection, you can essentially connect to whatever org you prefer. If you want to connect to a DX, a Scratch org there, a developer edition, sandbox, production org, or if you're using custom domain, that's pretty okay. And you can reach and grab all your metadata, including managed packages, their customizations, profiles, permission sets, custom objects, pretty much anything. Those can all be backed up offline. So in case you are refreshing your sandbox or something like that, and you have some pretty heavyweight configuration already in those can be moved away away from Salesforce there. So once you refresh your sandbox, you can put that metadata back in there and continue moving forward. Okay. Towards that purpose there, we also have the ability to schedule these backups. So in essence, you could say, I want to start this Friday, maybe say 9 o'clock. I want to take a backup every week. So our customers take a regular backup of their production orgs every week and high value developer orgs every day. So you have that offline backup that you have to restore that configuration in case you ever have a oops, I overwrote my class, or I changed my logic. I want to get that old version back, or I migrated something and broke my report or workflow. Any kind of disaster recovery, or for simple migration, you have this offline backup ready to go. Right? With that, you can do various things. By simply right-clicking, I can view a time series where I can see differences within the same org over time, or I can connect various orgs using these deploy arrows and then compare various orgs in a sandbox, production orgs to production org, whatever you prefer, and then see the differences at a high level. You can see the differences in red or new metadata in green. Right? And standard metadata that hasn't really changed are also available in gray. So any level that you want to see those differences and are going through your different metadata types, you could do that. We also support the XML versions of that. So in case you're a developer, you're used to seeing these changes in XML, we have great support for you as well. That extends to comparing profiles and permission sets as well. We show those in matrices. So you can very easily consume your security configuration where the differences are shown in red, new metadata in green, and stuff that hasn't really changed is left in black. And this is for any part of your profile or permission set, including field level security, right? With those understanding of the changes within the same org through the time series or between orgs using the compare metadata. Of course, by the way, those can all be reported on. All of these matrices that you see can be exported, or you can set up a metadata references report where those differences can be emailed to you. So you can see imagine keeping track of a production org over time. So if you have multiple production teams that manage a single production org, somebody releases some code there or updates the page layout, but fails to notify someone else or the rest of the teams that they have updated the account page layout. No worries. We can keep track of it, execute an automatic diff, and then notify you that in the last week or the last day, these things have changed, right? Makes things nice and easy. But with that understanding, you can actually deploy your metadata as well. You can quick deploy, rollback deploy, and put it into continuous integration. But before we go into that, deploy metadata helps you move metadata from one org over to the other. Notice I just said org and not sandbox. This org could be pretty much anything. It could be a sandbox to sandbox, production org to production org, whatever. But before that, we stop you and show you what things have changed in your org since the time you created that backup. So in case somebody is actively developing on that org and you need to bring all those changes in and update your snapshot, this acts as a great safety check to make sure you understand what changes were made since you took that backup and then start migrating things over, right? But what kind of things you can migrate? Pretty much anything. All differences are shown right here. It highlights only those things that have actually changed, so you're not wasting time looking through all the different metadata types. You can select at a very grand scale all objects that you want to move, or if you want to collate the list that has changed based upon differences, add missing, add different, you can absolutely do that. Or if you're a change sets user and you use to just add dependencies, that's perfectly okay as well. We have support for that, where you select something and then use add related. It brings over all the things that have really been associated with that particular object or queue or group, whatever. Gives you that stuff, but here is the best part. You decide what makes sense. So you can actually remove the things that you don't want to move and then move forward. And that includes taking care of everybody's favorite thing to do, profiles. You can both update as well as create profiles and partials as well, right? Great ability to let you decide what makes sense and then pick only the pieces that you want to move and then add it to your job list to move over. Okay. As part of that, you can delete metadata, deploy that metadata where you can validate, do a transactional migration as well as partial deploys. So great ways of deciding what needs to get migrated, move that, and everything is tracked in the managed package in a central location. So let me put that into a scenario. Let's say you are a release manager and you've set up a deployment pipeline. Pretty simple, dev to test, test to stage, stage to production. Now, with Snapshot, all of those changes, dev to test, test to stage, whatever, gets logged in a central location. So you can, in essence, use that data about your deployments to draw out a metadata pipeline and show your auditor, here is the path that my metadata is taking. Here are the logs to prove what I have changed over the last 6 months. And it always follows that path before anything gets deployed into production. So for compliance reasons, there are SOX, HIPAA, FDIC, whatever compliance that you're going for, this is a fantastic tool to keep track of all of that stuff. And of course, everything is schedulable as well, right? So you don't have to sit up to click a button there. You can schedule it, go for dinner, and when it is done, it's going to email you telling you everything is great, or scramble, get back to work because there was a problem there. You need to come in there and fix it, right? Extension of that, of course, we've been talking about comparisons and deployments from a manual perspective. Extension of that is you can put that same thing into a continuous integration pipeline. So part and parcel of Snapshot is we don't really want to distinguish between a manual deployment or a continuous integration. So some parts of your deployment can be done manually, and other parts can be done in a scheduled fashion, schedule or a continuous integration fashion. So dev to test can be manual deployments. Anything that lands into test can go into integration test in a continuous basis, and then flip again from integration test into production. That can be a scheduled deployment. So any process that you want to go for is perfectly fine. We can work with that. Now, that's all from a change and release management perspective. Let's take the other side of it. Management of the org itself. That's a key part as well. We have great reports to help you understand that as well. Data dictionary to help document what you have in your org, whatever different pieces that you want to log about your org itself. Summary statistics, object properties, field properties. These include things like required, default value, description, help text, formulas behind your formula field. Everything is documented along with relationships. Where are these objects and fields being used? In what classes, what test suites, what triggers, reports, report types. I can add any parts that I want and get all that stuff documented. And the best part is this also can be scheduled, right? Can be scheduled to get you a report in CSV over email, posted to Chatter, stored in Salesforce content, or into PDF, or in HTML. Everything is available on a scheduled or manual basis. Imagine you getting that email. Here is the state of your org, how your production org is defined, all the objects, fields under them, where they are being used, all that stuff once a month. So you don't have to sit there, type all that stuff out in Excel. It's done for you, right? Other things that we can offer there, other than just org documentation, optimization, field usage, pick list usage to help you keep track of what fields and values being used. Forgotten assets helps document the same for some really cool stuff, metadata stuff like email templates or custom tabs, queues, groups, anything that is not being used. It can execute that and then tell you these things are not being used, so they are now available to be optimized. And that also can be scheduled, or you simply decide I don't want to schedule them. I want to run them on in a manual basis. You can simply get them, export them, move on. Right? Great ways of identifying what groups are not being used, what email templates are not being used, what queues are not being used. It's essentially a Salesforce optimizer on steroids. The last thing, from a security perspective, we have great ways of helping you understand what's the security model set up and what users are allowed to do or not, because it crunches through your profiles and permission sets to finally yield a full-fledged report to show you what things are allowed to be done or not. So Josh here, even though he is assigned the custom standard user profile, which gets no access to the account object, there are various permission sets that give him full CRUD permissions at the end of the day. So trying to figure all that stuff out manually takes a long time. We can get all that stuff done for you, and again, can be scheduled. So you don't have to worry about that stuff. We can deliver this information for you. So what we have done, what we have talked about thus far is from a metadata perspective, the ability to create offline backups, investigate the differences within the same org in a time series or between orgs, between whatever org, sandbox to sandbox, production to production, whatever, understand the differences, move all that stuff over, and some great reports to help you understand how your org is structured, what's being used, what's not being used. Now, let's switch hats and talk about the data perspective, right? Now you have your data model set up properly. Now you've migrated a bunch of data into your production org that's thriving. I want to move some of those data out. Maybe you are splitting orgs, or maybe you want to bring some of that production data into a training sandbox or a developer sandbox for using with your test suites, right? You have the full copy sandbox. Of course, that gets pretty expensive. If you're paying for a partial copy and things like that, that's also getting pretty expensive as and when people need more and more data and the refresh schedules comes into play and such. That's really where Data Mover comes into play. Gives you unlimited ways of moving data anywhere to anywhere and then using them as you would see fit, right? Putting some latest data into your full copy sandboxes, or bringing some data from production into your testing sandboxes, or partial copy sandboxes and things like that, right? So how do we get started? So first, before I jump into something really cool there, some of the migration there, let's talk about a basic use case. Let's say I'm just coming into Salesforce from, say, Oracle database or whatever. How do I get started? That's really where the import data sets comes into play. Import data sets starts off from pretty much something that everybody would like to start off with, CSV files. You can select any number of CSV files. I'll start with something small here. I did a data export from Salesforce, and then I'm loading that CSV file here. It rapidly goes through and then constructs the list, the column list there, and then gets everything set up. So I can add additional files there to establish my hierarchy. I can also map fields. So maybe in Oracle, you called it company, or in SAP, you called it company. In Salesforce, it's called account. You can map these objects as well as fields. In account number here maybe goes to a long number there. I can map things as I feel fit, or say I don't want to move this at all, much like what you would do with data loader, right? So you can map things as you would want, and then start importing that data in, right? That data comes, again, everything is stored locally, nothing leaves your control there, no leakage whatsoever to Metazoa. So from a security perspective, this makes a huge difference. So it preps that import data set, preps the data ready to move that data into Salesforce and move right along. But let's switch gears here. That's if you are moving from Oracle into Salesforce. But what about the prior case that I talked about? How about if I want to move that data from production into one of my sandboxes? Or if I'm moving from production to production, how would you do that? That is why we build data sets. Build data sets gives you the capability to move that data as you see fit, right? We are using the bulk data API. Just saying that tells you the robustness of that. Bulk data API is a fantastic API that lets you move large sets of data anywhere you want, and it just crunches through hundreds of thousands, millions of records, at a phenomenal pace there. But we've still retained a easy UI on top of that, so you can set that up, move along, watch what it does. For starters, we create a list of objects that you have in your Salesforce org using the SOAP API, the data API, so you can select anything that you want. You can select stuff based upon names or based upon a filter. However you want to set it up, it goes through much like what you would with Salesforce reports. Select whatever makes sense, or select all records that you want, and you can see some example data and move forward, right? What I have done here is I have selected a few records already of 3 General Electric records. The cool part about the stuff is, notice all the names are the same, which means if I start moving this data using name matching criteria, it will always fail on the destination because they're going to clobber each other. Right? That's the scenario I wanted to show you how we get around things like that. So if you are in a standard parent-child account setups there, and they are just in different cities or things like that, any kind of criteria that you might have, we will be able to take care of. And that's really what I have done here. Each of these are parent-child, grandchild kind of setups. They are in different cities, just related to each other, and we'll be able to grab that metadata and move things along. As part of selecting account, I'm going to actually show you how we can establish a hierarchy. So whenever we select an object, it displays all related metadata to the selected object. In this case, account is something that I want. Account is what I'm selecting, and then opportunity, all opportunities related to the account is what I wanted to move. Because we are using Salesforce's API, we can choose standard objects or custom objects. Doesn't really matter. We have access to all of that, and you can see what this is. And what it shows you is different things. What is the field that established the relationship between, in this case, project with account here, or in this case, opportunity. There's an account ID field that connects it to account. So if there are multiple relationships or something like that, you can pick whatever you want to use to establish and retain that relationship. You can now just as easily move some really cool stuff like nodes. So all the polymorphic fields and all that stuff is also taken care of. You can select multiple of that. So I can say, I want to move node for account as well as node for opportunity. That's perfectly fine. I can decide whatever makes sense. I can load any fields that I want, right? What we have done is we are automatically selecting fields based upon security, right? Anything that you have write access to, we are automatically selecting them, but you decide what makes sense. So you can just as easily select who last modified it or who created it, and then move that, and can talk to Salesforce support in case you want to open that up and insert the right users. That's perfectly fine. But here is one cool thing that we have set up here, which is we are looking at external references. What that means is not only will we be able to move these records and then reestablish the relationship between these records, we will also be able to connect with existing information, right? It's really asking, if I'm moving accounts and there is a parent account or a partner account, how do you want me to connect with that? How do you want me to select that data and then connect to it? And it gives you a list of fields to connect with, and I can just as easily say, I want to look for billing city and account source or account number, and then connect to that. It'll grab the appropriate metadata and then be able to connect with that existing information in your destination org. So some really cool ways to not only migrate data and retain those relationships, it can also connect with existing information and gives you a fully connected data set to work with, right? Next step is pretty simple, and I'm just going to build a data set and start migrating it. It's just using the bulk data API to download all the metadata and the data there, and then start moving. And this can also be scheduled, right? So the template is retained. It's going to just keep repeating the same thing, repeating the same download, and then move that over on a schedule, however you want to move that forward. Now let's go to the other step, which is actually moving that to a particular destination. So thus far, we have talked about how to move or bring data in ready to be migrated over. Now we are shifting gears and actually moving that data into Salesforce. Migrate dataset gives you that capability to do exactly that. But here is one cool part that we have put a lot of effort into to move things over. First, I select a data set, and then I choose it to get ready to move over, right? Typically, when you start moving things over using data loader or one of the other existing tools there are a couple of interesting things that you're looking for. One is you strive really hard to keep an external ID in your data, so you uniquely identify those records and then update them, right? Use that to connect all the downstream fields and objects and whatnot, right? Here, we don't have that need, nor are we inserting that external ID, populating that data, and then using it. What that means is we are not forcing a requirement on you to have an external ID, nor are we modifying your metadata to execute your migration. We can, if you have an external ID, by the way, we can reuse that, absolutely. Why would you miss out on that? But in case you don't have one, but you still have that need, we can actually move data based on a combination key. So remember the three General Electric records, they are from different cities. So I'm really coming here and saying, not only identify my account based on a name, also look at billing city. So it finds an appropriate match. If there is absence of an appropriate match, obviously it's going to insert a record. But if there is a match, it will be able to overwrite that existing data. So it's a beautiful way of doing things which reduces the amount of requirements on you, or start making changes to your metadata and potentially introduce other issues that we can get around all of that stuff using this combination key method. And this can again go with any of the children as well. You can really look at it and say, hey, I don't want to look at just the name of the opportunity. I want to look at close date there. So I identify the right opportunity in case I have two General Electric turbine, sold year after year or something like that. We can take care of all of that stuff. In addition to moving that hierarchy over, remember I told you how we can connect with existing data? Look at that. For example, users. I can connect with the right user there, maybe username or maybe just email, to set the right owners for account, or created by, last modified by, all that metadata that are locked by Salesforce. If you get that unlocked, we'll be able to push data into it and set the right one. So maybe username, there is not a good match because you're moving from production to sandbox and the usernames are different, whatnot, but your email address might be the same, or some other thing that you might have. I can grab all of that, match with it, and then set the right owners, created by, last modified by, things like that. Any kind of relationship that you have, will be able to connect with it and then set it up right for you. We can scramble data as part of the migration. So things like, if there are some sensitive data that you need to scramble, an IT budget or annual revenue, whatever you select, we'll be able to scramble that information and then give your developers real test data without any personally identifiable data. That PII use case is handled right here. Right. One addition that is coming here shortly, it's on the roadmap that's going into development here, is along with that, some of our customers have said they're already playing around with this stuff. They have said, we don't want to scramble. We just want to add a prefix or a postfix to some of the data. Maybe you're moving contact information over, and the email in there just needs a postfix there, so it's not sending out emails to those contacts, things like that. We can automatically handle that as well. That's a change that's coming shortly. You can deactivate some of the metadata as part of your migration. Some of you have cutouts already, right? If I'm migrating some account information or lead information in, if I am a system administrator and if I have a flag set, don't send an email out, don't trigger and execute the Apex triggers or workflows, validation rules, all that stuff. But some of you may not have that, and that's a big burden because you don't want all of the standard stuff triggering off when you're doing a bulk data insertion. So we have the ability to essentially just mark anything that you don't want to execute, and then boom, your workflow rules, validation rules, and appropriate triggers are automatically turned off. And then once it finishes migrating that, it will turn all that stuff back in, right? So it takes care of that aspect as well. And finally, on to actual migration itself. You get the chance to stop in case it's a sensitive data set. You want to stop after the first error, you can absolutely do that. Or you can say, just swallow the error. Tell me what happened. Show me, put all that stuff into logs there, but continue moving that data over. Truncate in case there is any issues, especially since you're bringing in CSV data and such. If there is a field mismatch or something like that, we can take care of that. We shouldn't raise a problem just because it's a problem there. So we have that option. And then what do you want to log? You want to log successes and error messages, or just error messages there? Successes are sort of assumed or taken for granted. That's perfectly fine. And the batch size if you so prefer. So you can decide how big your batches are, and that helps the bulk API move forward appropriately, right? And just migrate that data, or of course, schedule that migration. So what we have talked about thus far is Data Mover that has now come into Snapshot gives you the ability to bring data from an external system into Salesforce, or gives you the ability to move data from Salesforce into Salesforce, production to production, production to sandbox, sandbox to production. However you want to set that up, we can absolutely do that. Bring data in as well as migrate data, finish migrating that data. That data is metadata aware. You can do data mapping. You do not need external IDs to do that. We use combination keys to migrate that data. And of course, when the data lands on the destination, or you have a nicely fully hierarchical account, opportunity, line items, contacts, everything placed in the hierarchy that you originally had, and without any losing off the other extraneous relationships, account to user, that kind of thing, also taken care of through Snapshot. So with this introduction, we have a complete solution through Snapshot, where you have the ability to take backups and manage your metadata, compare and see those differences, move the metadata between orgs, as well as the ability to manage data migrations as well through Snapshot. With that, back to you, Tom. Let's open it up to the questions there.
Thanks, Sridhar. So just a couple of quick slides here. And then we're going to, by the way, just as a reminder on the housekeeping there, if you have a question, there's a Q&A button on your interface there in the webinar. Just click on that and you can type in whatever question you have. And we're going to get to those here in just 1 second. So with that, if you want to know about our future webinars, where we're going to be, we also publish lots of blogs and articles on change and release management for Salesforce. And we also keep updates on the new features that are coming into the tool. Then follow us on Twitter, so you can follow us there. And also, if you want to reach out to us, there's our contact info at the top. If you'd like a demo, just shoot us an email. We'd be glad to give you a personalized demo. We can show you how this would work for your particular process, your change and release process, or your DevOps process. And we've also got a bunch of events coming up where we try to hit a lot of the Salesforce events. So we'll be at Southeast Dreamin' in March. We'll be at Trailhead DX in May. We'll be at Banff Dreamin' in June. And we'll be at NorCal Dreamin' in later in June as well. So all of those events are on their way as well. And we'll be there with booths. So come by and say hi. We'll have stickers and maybe stuffed animals. So pay us a visit. Okay, with that, we've got some questions coming in. If you have any questions while we're firing off here with the questions, go ahead and put them into the Q&A, as we said. So the first question here is the data portion an add-on to Snapshot? And if so, how does pricing work? It's not an add-on. It's an integrated piece. And so, you know, when you buy Snapshot, you get the data mover piece as well. It's not something you have to pay for separately. And if you're an existing customer, that feature should now be live in the tool for you. And if you right-click on those deployment arrows like Sridhar showed in the demo, you can start creating data sets and migrating them. Okay, so the next question. Can you handle org backups or org restores? Sridhar, you want to take that one?
Sure. Because we are using the bulk data API, we can really manage some large data sets. That said, we look at ourselves as a data migration tool. So can we move a large data set and do a data backup and restore? Absolutely. But we are really focusing on the ability to move data, between orgs or from a CSV connecting to Oracle or something like that, bringing that data into Salesforce rather than a backup solution. So data migration is what we are focused on, but we can definitely do strategic org backup and restore as well.
Thanks, Sridhar. I have another question here. How can we define sequence of CSVs that we need to import for parent-child objects?
I was hoping somebody asked this question. So Data Mover is actually pretty smart about that stuff. So as you define objects and files that you're bringing in and defining the connections between them, it actually will reorder your hierarchy there to decide what gets migrated first and then what gets migrated next and such. That said, there could be circular references that come into play. In those kind of cases, it would do a insert and then do a second pass to update the references during the second pass there to set the things the right way. So it figures it out by itself, and there might be some help that might be needed there, and we can handle that on a case-by-case basis. But it is designed to be intelligent to reorder and resequence your CSV to Salesforce insertions.
Great, thanks, Sridhar. Okay, got one more question here. We currently don't have external IDs in our objects. Do I need to add an external ID to every object, or do you add that as part of your data processing? I think you actually went over this during the demo, but why don't you just give us a quick refresher on that?
Yeah, I talked about that briefly during the demo there, but we seem to have a user here who has been burned by data loader. But so here is the thing. If you already have an external ID, we'll be able to definitely use that and connect that and identify the right record and then decide whether it needs to be inserted or the incoming record needs to be inserted or updated. But as you mentioned, most people may not have an existing external ID. Maintaining that is pretty tough. So that's really where our combination key approach comes into play. You can select multiple fields to uniquely identify a record. And if using that combination key, if we can find a match, we'll decide it's going to be an insert, it's going to be an update. And if you don't find a match, it's going to be an insert. So if there is an external ID, we will use it. In the absence of an external ID, we are not going to force you to insert one, nor are we going to insert one automatically as part of the data migration. We'll be able to handle that without that metadata change necessary. We'll be able to handle that seamlessly, no problems, using the combination key approach.
Okay, great. We got one last question, which is about pricing for Snapshot, and I'll take that one. So we price it in two ways. We have per user pricing, so you can buy a license for your users, or we also have org-based pricing, which if you have more than a couple of users, it's usually a better deal that way. And that's, based on the size of your Salesforce org, we get you an unlimited price. And for that, you get unlimited licenses, support, training, basically all you can eat. So if you want specific pricing for you, please just reach out to us and we'll provide that for you. And lastly, if you would like a demo, we can always provide a demo for anybody. And one more question jumping in here. Can we schedule data import? Sridhar, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Both the backup of the data itself as well as the migration, you can absolutely schedule it. So that is part of the tool, not a problem.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I think we've answered the questions we had out there. If you had questions that we didn't get to today or think of one after the webinar is over, then please reach out to us and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. So I want to thank everybody for your time, and for all you Snapshot users, go start using your data mover. Let us know what you think. All right, everyone, have a great day and take care.
Thank you.